Hello everyone, I'm the Introverted Astrologer, and today I'm bringing you the third in my series of videos on the royal family. There are huge changes ahead for the King and the Queen over the next 3 years. So today we're going to have a look at where they are now and where we are heading to by 2028. There is tremendous pressure in these charts, so I am going to introduce a gentle boundary around my work. I do not look for death because I would find it unethical to do so. However, we can take a closer look at health because this is expected as people get older. I wondered whether the pressure on the King was going to increase over the next few years. And there's no better place to start than quickly recapping on the basic material that we have in his natal chart, because this will tell us something about the strength of this man. His overall signature is that of Leo, and that might seem a bit strange when he only actually has one planet in Leo. The majority of his placements narrowly fall in either mutable or fixed signs, and so we use that Leo ascendant as a tiebreaker. With Mercury, the Sun, the Moon and Pluto in fixed signs, plus the Leo ascendant, we have the outcome of fixed fire, which of course correlates with Leo. And I think there's great staying power in this chart. This is somebody who would take great pride in being as good as his word. This isn't somebody who would start looking for escape routes just because the going had got a bit tough. These Scorpio placements are showing us somebody who is intensely private and secretive, somebody who looks very much below the surface in life. This is not a shallow person. With this very public moon here in the 10th house, we can see that this is somebody who values stability in the public eye, who likes to see continuity, who feels emotionally secure by maintaining a strong personal reputation and carrying out his public duties in a stable, honourable way. This is good leadership material. There is this reforming streak with this very tight opposition between Uranus and Jupiter. So this is somebody who can think outside the box. Now, why do I see some major changes over the next 3 odd years in the royal family? I'll try to answer that question in 2 parts. And the first one that we'll talk about right now is his progressions. When an astrologer uses progressions, what they are basically doing is shifting 1 day forward in their ephemeris for every 1 year that a person has lived. And these green glyphs around the outside of the chart show us the progressed planets right now at the time of recording. In fact, a couple of very salient progressions at the moment involve this progressed Mercury, which is opposing his natal Pluto. It's within a minute of exactitude already. Mercury is moving retrograde. And I think it's interesting to note that in astrology, Mercury can also rule our siblings. And of course, we have had some major developments with regard to his brother, Andrew. When Mercury and Pluto come together, we might be looking at major decisions being made because this is an opposition. But something deep needs to shift. Mercury is information and Pluto can be what is hidden from view. And so by these 2 energies coming together, we literally saw secrets surfacing and coming out into the open, into our consciousness to be dealt with. This could also be a very strategic kind of coupling. There could be negotiations regarding power, and I think all of those are very apt given those shocking recent developments. The King's progressed moon is currently moving through the 8th house of transformations, crises, secrets, and we will actually see an opposition between his moon and his natal Saturn becoming exact in just a few weeks' time. And this particular connection will pass in a month or 2, but it can be extremely heavy while we're in it. So during March, April, May of this year, the king may be feeling worn out from the pressures of duty. This can feel very emotionally heavy. We can feel overworked. Our vitality is low. We really struggle to stay optimistic, but it will pass. But there are far bigger changes afoot, and this is why I wanted to start this video with the king's progressions. If we have a look at his progressed angles, which you can see here, then you'll notice that they're getting towards the end of their respective signs. When the king was born, his ascendant was at around 5 degrees of Leo, and over the years it has gradually inched forward, and it's currently at just under 29 degrees of Virgo. Similarly, he was born with his midheaven in the sign of Aries, but that too has inched forward and is at just under 29 degrees of Gemini. And this means that as we move into 2027 and 2028, some extremely important shifts are going to take place. When either our ascendant or midheaven changes sign by progression or solar arc, it is extremely important because it marks a major shift in the life expression. The ascendant is describing how we present ourselves to the outer world, and it will often say something about our physical presentation to our actual body. The midheaven also is saying something about our public status, our profession, how the world sees us, our outside public role. And what will happen, not this year, but certainly 2027 and 2028, is that the progressed ascendant and the progressed midheaven are going to start bumping up across this extremely tight partile opposition in the king's natal chart. And so the midheaven will link up with Uranus. The ascendant will square both Jupiter and Uranus. And all of this in just a few minutes before they move on into a new sign. And this is phenomenal. It's intense. This Uranus and Jupiter together in his natal chart is showing us the part of the king that is a bit restless, perhaps would like to break free at times. Never underestimate, however, quite how staunch and loyal the basic chart is. But it's also the part of the chart which is truth-seeking and unorthodox. Uranus can also bring that great unpredictability. And so when his progressed midheaven and Uranus meet, just as a sign change looms, this is an incredible reorientation, and I cannot predict exactly what it will involve. Please do take care to note that I don't look at death, and I'm not implying death. But certainly sudden, surprising events, reorientations, perhaps a changing of structures, as in major shifts in the institution. This is just intensely dramatic. And there is another progression that is gradually becoming ripe, and this relates to his Mars. His progressed Mars is just under 21 degrees of Aquarius at the moment, and roughly around late 2027, early 2028, we might see the Mars square with his natal sun become active. And there are a spectrum of possibilities when the progressed Mars is square with our natal sun. They can include such a strong clash of wills that we have confrontations with those around us. There could be great physical strain, and another potential too is actually surgery. And so we have another key progression adding to this hot pot of things that are brewing for the next couple of years. I'd also like to show you some of the King's transits, and so we'll go to that chart now. Now the King has some important transits that begin this year. Some of these are going to be very lengthy ones, which will take 2 or 3 years to play out. And a little bit like Princess Catherine and Prince William, he's going to be affected by transiting Saturn moving into a cardinal sign. Most immediately, this is because he has an Aries midheaven. The midheaven is an angle of our charts, and these are highly sensitive points to transits. Saturn will move over his midheaven in an ongoing transit later this year. This is interesting because his natal Saturn is in Virgo. Virgo is the sign that has connotations with service and health, but more importantly, that same Saturn rules his 6th house of health, because Saturn rules Capricorn, which is the sign on his 6th house cusp. Given that the king's health has been an issue, this is quite important this year. While Saturn doesn't get within a degree of orb of his natal Venus, it does, however, oppose his natal Neptune as part of this lengthier unfolding transit. I'll put some dates up on the screen for you to get an idea of what we're looking at. But this is important because Saturn is also speaking a lot about responsibility and duty. And when it comes to meet with his midheaven, there could be an impact on his public role. There could be a need to delegate more duties out, for example. There could be health management themes. We could see tension between his public life and his private life. But it's a strong transit, and the fact that it also opposes Neptune can indicate health depletion. This can quite literally show our body feeling weaker, more fatigued, because Neptune tends to dissolve and break down and confuse. The king may also be dealing with feelings of uncertainty about the best course forward. In itself, at this stage, this is not necessarily a stepping back from his role, but I think it will bring issues. Uranus is also going to shift out of the sign of Taurus and into Gemini, and as it does so, it too will form a tense aspect with his natal Saturn, the Saturn which rules his 6th house of service and health. So we're seeing this importance being repeated somewhere else too. Uranus always brings some unpredictability, and it's meeting up with a part of the natal chart which thrives on structure, on established routines. And so Uranus will be placing some pretty sudden stresses on the king's framework and what he takes for granted. We can also have a look at transiting Pluto, which is on the cusp of his 7th house. This is an angle. Angles are highly sensitive, as we discussed with his midheaven. Another angle will be getting some gradual, ongoing, long-term transits from Pluto. And so his formal partnerships, his marriage, possibly diplomatic relationships, and his relationship with the nation could be transformed over the next couple of years. Pluto also speaks of great power, of transformations and unavoidable changes, and I hope I'm managing to convey to you quite how much is happening to the king in the next couple of years. And finally we have Chiron, which is moving through late Aries, but will enter the very early minutes of Taurus later this year, and by so doing will form a conjunction with his natal moon. This moon which thrives on stability, on maintaining stable and loyal relationship with the British public. When Chiron meets with the moon, it tends to introduce far greater emotional sensitivity, potentially some wounding. We may have to emotionally deal with wounds or limitations in some way. I think because this is falling in the 10th house, the public house, this could also be showing great sympathy and compassion from the British public towards the king. And so there could be increased public concern about his health and strong sympathy too. Amongst all these tougher transits, though, we can take heart that Jupiter will cross his ascendant this year and shift into his 1st house. Now, Jupiter can be overrated. and I wouldn't count this as one of his more weighty transits, but it is going to add some light touches. I think there will be stronger support for the king. Jupiter can bring optimism, protection, goodwill, and I think the king is going to have his heart warmed by the intensity of support he receives from people around him. Please do note that in these transits I am not describing the death of the king. I think it's very important to be clear about that, because when we have a lot of planetary activity on the angles of our chart, and including from outer planets too, this is showing intense moments in life. But we must place this in perspective, because any of the major shifts in our life often has transits or progressions which bring in the angles of our chart, and major transformations come in many different shapes. A final point to raise is the matter of eclipses. We know the princess is being impacted by the total solar eclipse later this summer. But because the royal family all tend to have this dollop of Leo in their charts somewhere, one of the axes that the eclipse series will be affecting over the next few years is the Leo-Aquarius axis. And so year on year, we're going to see eclipses impacting royal charts. And in fact, the eclipse that took place roughly a month ago impacted on the chart of Andrew because it activated his natal sun. The king is going to have a lunar eclipse impact his chart later this summer, and it is his Saturn again which is going to be activated, and this Saturn is being picked out in a few different ways, so this is important. However, I suspect that the particular eclipse impacting him is one of the gentler ones, and this could be illuminating him with a potential way forward out of something which has caused him some concern. I had a look at the King's solar return for this year, the return which covers the period starting from November of 2025 and runs through for roughly 12 months. And as you can see, we calculate this return at the exact moment that his sun returned to the position it was in when he was born. Now, whilst there was some tension in the return, it didn't immediately shriek out to me that this would be a year of total collapse. I could also see fortitude and hope in the chart. There isn't a marked interplay between the angles of the return and his natal chart, at least not to a degree that I would find overwhelming. We can see Pluto here nearby to his 7th house cusp, echoing the transit which I described for him earlier. I can pick out that the solar return moon is in the sign of Virgo, that sign of service, routines, but also health. On balance, so I was quite satisfied that this was a return period we should interpret in light of the formal words that he made to the public last December. And this was when he stated that, "Today I am able to share with you the good news that thanks to early diagnosis, effective intervention and adherence to doctor's orders, my own schedule of cancer treatment can be reduced in the new year." The returns, however, do get a little more difficult as we move forward into next year and the year after. And the return that I cast for the year beginning November 2027 through to 2028 is showing some pretty dramatic activity across the angles, particularly Uranus on the midheaven of the solar return, looking somewhat shocking and emotionally disruptive. We can also make out that the North Node will be joining Pluto on his 7th house cusp, the area where we look for his formal relationships, indicating major life change and reorientation. And we will have to take things a year at a time, but certainly this is the kind of return that is symbolically echoing to me some of the major changes in progressions that we discussed when we first started this video. Can we see anything similar in the Queen's chart? This lady is going to have so many similarities with her husband because she too shares a roughly similar midheaven and ascendant. And what this means, therefore, is that she too is going to have some quite weighty transits from Saturn during this year. Moreover, transiting Pluto will start to conjunct with her descendant to her formal relationships, just like the king. In some respects, I think her Saturn transits this year are going to be slightly more weighty because it is going to activate her very tender conjunction of Moon and Venus in Cancer and in the 12th house. But if I pull you down to look at her ascendant and midheaven, you can quickly pick up that they too are very late in a sign, and so a sign change is imminent. Two angles will be changing sign almost simultaneously. The midheaven bisolar arc too is also going to shift sign in around a year and a half's time, and this is phenomenal. We can now see that this couple are going to have a time of shared experience with these immensely important progressions. And it is for these reasons that I suspect we have big changes coming, and that the area of concentration is more likely to be in 2027 and 2028. And I look forward to doing a royal video again next year where we'll pick those things up. Please do take any predictions about the King's imminent death with a pinch of salt. Now, in my next video, I'm going to look closely at the British political scene because there are some very important developments around springtime. And so I notice a few of you have been asking for an update, and I will have that one with you soon. Until then, thank you for watching. Take very good care of yourselves, and God bless you all.